Following the release of these tapes in 1995, Mark Furman was forced to resign from the Los Angeles Police Department. However, despite his admission of crimes, they were all protected by the statute of limitations, meaning that too much time had passed for him to be convicted of any of these. He now works for Fox News as a guest commentator as well as Sean Hannity. So with that in mind, with the kinds of treatment between Rodney King, with his beating, and Mark Furman, now it's very important that you understand that Mark Furman was not alone. He was not the only person doing this. He was just the person who got caught. So with that in mind, knowing what African Americans were going through at the time, let's begin to look at the African American reaction to the police department. We have a rapper by the name of Ice-T from Los Angeles, releasing his album I'm Your Pusher from 1988. But the most important group we have to talk about is called NWA. Three of the most important members of NWA were Eazy-E, Ice Cube, and Dr. Dre. NWA's big breakout success comes from their album Straight Outta Compton from 1988, with two of their hit songs listed below. NWA actually receives a cease and desist letter from the FBI telling them to stop what they're doing because their music is promoting the idea that other people should be violent toward the police. Now, I'm hoping you can see the irony in that the members of NWA and their fans and their families were treated so horribly by the police and were victims of police brutality, and now they're being accused that what they're saying is going to lead to the police being victimized. It just seemed ridiculous to anyone within the community who actually understood what was really going on. NWA releases a follow-up album in 1991. The album title is listed below, and it doesn't look like much if you read it the normal way, but in order to get what it's a play on, you have to actually read the letters backward. One thing that's really interesting about this reality rap is that white suburban kids loved it from all over the country. Yes, it's telling the story of African Americans in these communities where they are the victims of police violence, and people who are in similar situations, of course, can relate to that, but white suburban kids to it on an even greater level. This is the exact same thing that happened in 1955 with the rise of rock and roll music. Alan Freed thought that when he put on a rock and roll concert, he was going to only attract African American kids. White kids came too. There is a long musical trend in America of white audiences embracing African American musical styles. The last few artists that we'll talk about, the first one is Public Enemy, where Flavor Flav got his start. Today, Flavor Flav is known for his reality love shows, but at the time he was known for Public Enemy, who are a serious rap group who compose music advocating for African American rights in America. One of their first albums was It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back, and it's a turn toward social commentary. Another album of theirs, called Fear the Black Planet, had the hit Fight the Power advocating for African American rights. And by this point, rap music is completely electric. It's all about synthesizers and programmed drum beats. We basically have no more acoustic instruments by this. We also have an important female figure by the name of Queen Latifah. Her album All Hail the Queen with the single Ladies First. Queen Latifah is also rapping to advocate for Black rights and Black equality, but she's specifically speaking as a voice of Black women in the community. Just like Headbangers Ball, we have Yo MTV Raps, debut in August of 1988, and it quickly becomes the most popular program on MTV. So even back in the 80s, we already see rock beginning to be displaced by rap and hip-hop. The fact that Yo MTV Raps is about rap and African American musical style, but being featured heavily on MTV, which just a few years later was almost entirely targeting white middle-class Americans, just shows how mainstream rap became very quickly. Let's talk about some controversy over rap that have emerged and solidified by the end of the 1980s. Rock fans reject rap just as enthusiastically as they rejected disco. Some of their claims are that no one's playing an instrument, and if they're not musicians, how can this be music? However, Karlheinz Stockhausen, who we talked about during the late 60s, who was a classical musician who pioneered using the recording studio as an instrument, began creating electronic music decades ago. So really there's nothing new here, but people didn't realize that at the time. Another example, the Beatles and the Beach Boys had been manipulating sound in the studio for 20 years. The final thought for this week is that we have to make an observation and ask a question now that rap has moved into the mainstream of American music. The observation is that if we take two earlier musical styles, jazz and rock, both jazz and rock were African American music styles that had a white artist begin to play that music, and it became mainstream and it became very successful among white audiences as well as African American audiences. So for jazz, we can look to someone like Glenn Miller, a white artist during World War II, who made swing music, jazz music popular for everyone in America. And of course, for rock music, it would be Elvis Presley, who was the first white artist to really have mainstream success with rock and roll. Well, rap is mainstream now. The question is, will there be a white artist who comes in and makes rap popular for mainstream America, not just African Americans in America? We'll have to wait to find out the answer to that. In our next and last video, we will examine some underground rock scenes that were emerging in the 1980s. They're going to play a big role in music in the 1990s.